It's August 21 in Berlin. Schopenhauer is in his little room at some sort of inn, and some people are talking outside. Their noise is bothering Schopenhauer. So does he A, ask them to be quieter, B, go outside, or C, throw one of them down the stairs? The answer, B. No, of course not. Obviously C, that's the wild card in there. He eventually gets taken to court and was found guilty, having to pay her a bit of cash every year for the rest of her life. Go back in time a little bit earlier to 1820, and he's a lecturer at a university in Berlin. There's just one problem. He scheduled his lectures at the exact same time that Hegel, another philosopher, is giving his lectures. All the students choose to attend Hegel, which I wasn't aware people chose which lectures to go to in university, but regardless, Schopenhauer ends up lecturing to an empty room. I bring up these events in Schopenhauer's life because it might relate to his pessimistic philosophy. The life of the philosopher influences the philosophy that they espouse. And perhaps there are those going through some tough times as well that might relate to this pessimistic outlook on life. Hopefully you just don't relate to the whole throwing someone down a flight of stairs thing. You might find some solace knowing that you aren't alone in feeling this dread about life and the world. With that being said, let's actually get into his philosophy and not just look at his unique life. Hello my fellow sufferers, I'm Paul and welcome to Philosophy Toons. Wait, why are you calling us fellow sufferers? Well, funny enough, that's one of the practical consequences that result from Schopenhauer's philosophy, a consequence that he himself lists out. From this point of view, one might indeed consider that the appropriate form of address between man and man ought to be, not monsieur, sir, but fellow sufferer, compagnon des misères. Okay, I don't speak French, so please don't roast me for that last part. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What is this point of view that Schopenhauer is talking about that might make us look at each other as fellow sufferers? Well, that's the topic of today's video, an exploration into Schopenhauer's thoughts on suffering in the world. For those playing along at home, I'm using this little book here which takes essays and aphorisms from Schopenhauer's work, Parerga and Paralipomena? Man, this video is just going to be me embarrassing myself trying to pronounce things. Do note though that although Schopenhauer wrote everything we will quote today, the arrangements of all these essays and aphorisms are assembled topically by the translator R.J. Hollingdale. So Schopenhauer has a couple thoughts about what life is, what's really going on when we wake up day to day to go do stuff. One of these thoughts is about this never-ending striving. The vanity of existence is revealed in the whole form existence assumes, in continually becoming without being, in continual desire without satisfaction, in the continual frustration of striving of which life consists. With this quote in mind, I want to ask you, what are you doing in your life right now? Chances are you're either in school or you're working. For those in school, the purpose of spending all that money is to work and eventually get a return on that investment, which won't happen if you take philosophy like me. So the roads we take seem to lead to work. Okay, but why do we work? To get our basic needs, to spend money on luxuries, to save for retirement? Okay, but what if we get all that? Are we done? No more action required? Like what happens when we retire, or if we retire? Will the striving and working stop then? I feel like I'd still be striving then. Maybe to have a good retirement, have a good relationship with my hypothetical family. Hell, the thought of retirement only makes us think of things that we're now free to do, like our hobbies. The point I'm trying to make is that it seems like we're always going to be after something. The only possible exception is perhaps some sort of ascetic monk. But even then it could be argued that they're striving after asceticism. Let me know if you guys can think of an exception to this. Now I know we just covered one quote, but there's a lot to unpack here. It's like you're in a speed dating event and the other person is super interesting. You want to keep going. Like for instance, does this striving in life really equate to vanity or suffering? What about that famous phrase, the journey beats the destination? If you're subscribed to my channel, you probably have a successful love life. And if you think about it, is there really an end point to being in a relationship with someone? It seems to me like relationships are a form of constant striving with no real end point or goal, and yet we treasure them. Maybe it's not even striving, I don't know. But I wouldn't say the time spent in relationships are in vain. Alright, we have to move on to another quote or else we could talk about this forever. But it just goes to show how interesting of a philosopher Schopenhauer is in my opinion. Another interesting idea looks at life as a period of distress compared to our usual existence. What is our usual existence? Well, non-existence. You could also look upon our life as an episode on profitably disturbing the blessed calm of nothingness. In any case, even he who has found life tolerably bearable will, the longer he lives, feel the more clearly that on the whole it is a disappointment, nay, a cheat. Okay, so the second part of that seems to depend on the state of mind of people much older than my immature young self, so we'll put that aside for now. But this conception of life as a kind of speed bump in the road is interesting. Before we were born, we didn't exist, and the time we didn't exist was unfathomable. We'll be in the same position after we die, in this subliminally infinite non-existence. But in between those two great amounts of time is this little tiny bump, and that's our life. And if you think back to before you were born, you didn't have any distress or pain because there was no you to experience such things. Likewise, once we die, we won't have to deal with pain or distress. It's only in life when we come across these burdens. But it's also in life when we come across things that bring us joy. Seeing a sunrise up in the mountains, waking up next to someone you love, getting a Popeye's 3-piece tender meal. But Schopenhauer has an explanation for even these supposed moments of joy we feel in life. He believes that happiness is negativity while pain or suffering is positivity. But wait, I know that sounds confusing, but he is not using the words positivity and negativity to mean good and bad. In this context, negativity means the absence of something. So the negativity of happiness really refers to this idea that happiness is simply the absence of pain. Positivity means something that is present. So the positivity of pain means that it is felt and present. Here's an example that Schopenhauer uses. Just as we are conscious not of the healthiness of our whole body, but only of the little place where the shoe pinches, so we think not of the totality of our successful activities, but of some insignificant trifle or other which continues to vex us. When we're happy, quote unquote, it means simply that we aren't experiencing pain or we're negating that pain. So that Popeye's 3-piece meal, sure, I'm happy when I eat it, but that's because it's negating my pain of hunger. Think of all the things that make you happy and see if you could find the pain that's being negated or addressed. Romance and friendship addresses our loneliness, video games address our boredom, coffee addresses our fatigue, stuff like that. Pain and suffering, on the other hand, is not simply the negation of the happy, but is the thing itself that is present. If someone took a sledgehammer to my knees, that pain is felt positively, and when we're in pain or suffering, that consumes all of our attention. For evil is precisely that which is positive, that which makes itself palpable, and good, on the other hand, i.e., all happiness and all gratification, is that which is negative, the mere abolition of a desire and extinction of pain. So we could then think of life as this line, not of happiness or pain, but of general neutrality. However, only pain causes these spikes in our life. So our lives are either pain or the absence of pain. Now, before you get all doom and gloom, remember, you've got a biased pragmatist as a host, and I'm not going to let you walk away without some practical takeaways. In fact, Schopenhauer won't either, because these are his own ideas. Besides the whole fellow sufferer thing we talked about in the intro, what else do you think might practically result if you saw life through this pessimistic lens in which suffering is widespread? It makes us see other men in a true light, and reminds us of what are the most necessary of all things: tolerance, patience, forbearance, and charity, which each of us needs and which each of us therefore owes. If life is ultimately suffering, that doesn't mean that you're alone. That means that everyone's a part of this shit show. And maybe, by adhering to that belief, you start to treat others with a bit more kindness, knowing that they too are suffering. And that is our video. I hope it didn't make you big sad or anything. And you know what? I'm going to use my extensive, supreme influence as a philosophy YouTuber to shout out my friend, Thesaurus Dinosaurus, who also has a YouTube channel. He covers alternative sports, I would say like robotics and marble racing. And I know this shout out has nothing to do with philosophy. I know it's a completely different niche, but hey, I'm just following Schopenhauer's advice of remembering to be kind to others. I got you there, didn't I? If you enjoyed this collection of pixels and sounds, then consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell. And with that, I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.